Hi, everyone. This is Jack Allwild with another money episode. Today, we have very special guest, Paula Pant from the Afford Anything podcast. Paula, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, so before we get into your Netflix show and some personal finance thoughts, Paula, I'd like to ask you, what was your relationship with money like growing up?
Mm, It was one of scarcity, and that scarcity was largely psychological. So we were my family we were immigrants. I was born in Kathmandu, Nepal, and I came to the United States as a child. And so as I was growing up, my family was just getting started. My dad was uh 50 years old when he opened his first retirement account, when he opened his 403b. He was 42, I think, 42 or 43 when he bought his first car ever in the United States. Or I mean, he'd never had a car in Nepal either, so his first car ever in his life. He was about 42, 43 years old. They bought their very first home when they were right around 43. So, a lot of the milestones um, that people who are born and raised in the United States do when they're younger, right? Oftentimes people will get their first car when they're 16 or 17, and they might buy their first home when they're 30 or 35, right? A lot of those milestones my parents did later in life as a result of immigrating to the US later in life. And so, we were very much just kind of getting established as a family. We were brand new and we were um I think for me mentally, I was very much coming from this because as an immigrant, you don't have family here to support you, right? You don't have that informal safety net of family or longtime friends. You don't have that social support. Very much had this kind of fear of like what happens if I don't have enough money and then, and there's nobody around. Like how do I make sure that I can always take care of myself? And so that for me, that kind of scarcity drove a lot of my mentality around money very much through my 20s. And it fueled a lot of the frugality of my 20s. And so I've actually had to actively work to unlearn scarcity mindset and to be okay with spending because there's spending requires confidence. You need a certain level of confidence in yourself to know, like, no matter what, I will figure out how to make more money. Until you have that confidence, it can be really tempting to just clutch on to whatever you have.
How did that transition period go from the scarcity mindset to more of an abundance mindset? And
Mm.
when, what age would you say? And was there a certain trigger or a book you read or something that triggered that?
I was probably in my late 20s when I started kind of really doing a lot of inner work to try to switch my mentality from scarcity to abundance. And it's a long, slow process. I mean, any form of inner work, it requires a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication, a lot of consistency, right? A few things that I did, I knew at a cognitive level, I knew that it would be better to have an abundance mindset, right? Because I knew that you can't shrink your way to greatness. And if you are wasting lots and lots of time in order to save pennies, then you are devaluing your own life. So, at a cognitive level, I understood that. I understood the importance of making this transition. I also knew, though, that um, to get my emotions to catch up to my thinking would require time. And if you think of a triangle, right, you've got the three corners of the triangle: thought, behavior, and emotion. So the thoughts were already gelled into place through a lot of the reading that I was doing, through understanding at that cognitive level the importance of an abundance mindset. And then I had to make myself behave in those ways. I had to not drive across town to save $3.60. I had to, uh, be okay with ordering the bagel with the sesame seeds on it, even though it's 25 cents more expensive than the plain bagel, right? I had to be okay with those kinds of things. I had to practice giving too, right? Because giving requires, again, that confidence of like feeling as though you have enough to be able to be generous. And so when I say giving, I mean it in every capacity. I mean it in terms of donating money to nonprofits, and eventually I opened a donor advised fund. But I also mean just the practice of being generous with friends, being generous with family, being generous in the relationships around me. So all of those things, synergistically, not to use like corporate jargon here,
Mm.
but all of it kind of interwove together to form the corner of that triangle that is behavior. And then once the thoughts and the behaviors were in place, then slowly over time, that third corner of the triangle, the emotional component, could form.
You had a movie come out on Netflix 2022, Get Smart with Money. Why don't you give us an overview of that process and what people can expect from that? And I guess I'll start off with I really liked it. So
Oh, thank
so
you.
I definitely recommend people go watch it. And yeah, so why don't you give us an overview?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's a very surreal to see yourself on Netflix. I've got to say that. I was also, and this maybe sounds a little naive, shocked at how big of a reach Netflix has. Like I was
Uh,
hearing from people I haven't talked to in 15 years were reaching out to me saying, "Hey, I just saw you on Netflix," you know. But that the movie is the story, it's four intersecting storylines, right? So you think of a braid, it's sort of four storylines braided together. And the four storylines, each one features one coach and one protege. And so there are four financial coaches and four financial proteges. I was one of the four coaches. And in each storyline, the protege is each protege is in a different geographic location across the country and dealing with a very different type of financial problem. So the protege that I was working with, her name is Lindsay. She's based in Texas, and she just didn't make very much money. She was a server and a bartender. She made around $50,000 a year. And so she didn't have a spending problem. She had an income problem, and she needed to learn how to build side hustles, how to be entrepreneurial so that she could make more money. And so that was what we worked on. And there were other storylines. So there was a couple based in Colorado, and their problem, they were very high income, very high spending. So Mr. Money Mustache was their coach, and he worked with them on developing the muscle of frugality. Meanwhile, there was another storyline that took place in New Jersey. Tiffany Aliche, the budgetnista, was the coach, and her protege. She worked on, she had sort of a middle level income and middle level spending. All of that seemed pretty normal, pretty fine. Um, but she had a lot of student loan debt, and she was just kind of felt like she was constantly battling debt that was hanging over her head, that just seemed felt insurmountable. And so that was her albatross, and that was what they worked on. And then the fourth storyline, there was an NFL player, and he signed a $1.6 million contract and then spent most of it. By the time he was, looked around, he had only $200,000 left. And he was like, oh my goodness, this is my last, you know, I just spent 1.4 million. I've only got 200,000 left. Um, you know, how do I handle the last of my money responsibly? And so his was the windfall storyline.
Through that experience with your protege, what was something that maybe surprised you working with her?
She was so dedicated, so hardworking, so focused. I mean, just, the one thing that I can't teach is motivation, right? I can tell you how to do it, but I can't make you want to do it. And that's always, sometimes when I work with people, or just when I talk to people in my audience, there's a wide variety. When you've got an audience that's quite large, there's a wide variety of motivation levels that you see. And so sometimes I hear from people who are like, they think that they really want to make more money. They think that they really want to boost their income, to grow a side hustle, to be an entrepreneur, to build a business. But then when you start talking to them, it's clear that they're not willing to make any of the sacrifices that are necessary to do it. And so those are the people that I can't help, because if you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and put in the work, I can't. It's like you can be a personal trainer, but you can't make somebody go to the gym, right? Um, you can be a chef, but you can't make somebody you can help, you can show them how to prepare foods, but you can't stop them from ordering McDonald's on DoorDash late at night, right? So what was great about Lindsay was that that was just not an issue at all. She had the drive, she had the hustle, she was willing to do what it took. So for her, she didn't know what to do, but she was willing to do whatever it took. And she just needed somebody to show her the what.
I think it's tough for a lot of people with like, yeah, you have to check your ego because like you're admitting when you're looking for help, you're admitting that you don't have the answers to the issue you're going through. And I think that's half the battle, I think, for a lot of people. I mean,
Mhm.
speaking of, it seemed like all of the proteges on the in the movie were quite motivated. What was the process like for them to get coached by you guys on that movie?
It
Like,
was, I mean, we worked together for a long time. From the time that the producers first contacted me until the time that the movie was released, that was about 2 years.
wow,
So we worked together for quite a while. And Lindsay and I we still text. We're still
okay,
quite close. She's a great artist. I've actually asked her to draw a tattoo that I would like to get.
wow,
So, that is how close we are, and that's how much we work together.
cool. Okay, so transitioning a little bit to some of your personal finance thoughts, you had a tweet November 14th that I thought was really interesting.
No,
And
no sentence that ever begins like that ends well.
okay, and you said a sign of intelligence is a willingness to change your mind when presented with new data or information.
Mhm.
Ask someone, what opinions have you changed in the last 10 years, and listen not for the content, but for the quantity. If they can easily rattle off a half dozen or more, then they likely have an open mind.
Mhm.
So, Paula, with that said,
Yeah.
I posed that question to you, and it can be about life in general or in the personal finance realm. What opinions have you changed in the last 10 years?
Oh, so many. All right. One is that distinction between a scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, right? I used to be just a penny pincher, right? And to be a penny pincher is often to sacrifice your time in order to save very trivial amounts of money. And so that's one thing that I've very, very actively worked to change. And one thing that I do is I ask myself, would I pay an assistant to do this task? If the answer is no, then why am I doing it myself? Right. Um, so when I'm trying to determine which tasks I can eliminate, which are so unimportant that they don't need to be done, am I willing to pay an assistant $50 an hour to do this? And if it's not worth that, then why am I doing it? So
That's a
that's
point.
one thing. It's one thing that I've changed. A second thing I've changed is when it comes to the opinions of your family, right? Your family will often have strong opinions about career related decisions or business related decisions. And they might tell you, for example, that going into business for yourself is too risky, or investing at all, no matter what it's in, even in stocks or whatever, they might say that's too risky. Keep your money in cash. Um, you know, Family will have opinions. And so one thing that I used to think, oh, you should, honor your father and mother, right? Now, my opinion is uh, you need to do what is best for your descendants, not what is best for your ancestors, right? So if your ancestors are giving you recommendations that would uh, come at the cost of the quality of life of your descendants, whether or not you have children, right? Then you need to do what is best for your descendants, or for the future, not for those who came before you. And sometimes there's going to be a clash, right? Sometimes doing the thing that is that is encouraged by those who came before you is detrimental to those who will come after you.
Well, Paula, as we are winding down, I like to ask everyone, what's the best and worst personal finance advice you've either heard or received?
The best is, I'm going to say aggressively invest, but when I say aggressively, I don't mean that as a risk profile. I mean that I don't mean that in terms of um, asset selection. I mean that in terms of contributions. Aggressively make new contributions into your investments.
Okay.
Because your contributions are the single biggest determinant of your portfolio success. So be very, very aggressive about, particularly when you're young, and you'll never be younger than you are today. Uh, Aggressively make contributions into your investments. I'd say that's probably you know, the best piece of advice, and reinvest everything. The worst, uh, I think, is the fixation on frugality, hyper frugality, because you know I have no objection to. I mean, when I don't even own a car, but when I did, it was a used Honda Civic, right? I think that is an example of healthy frugality. But unhealthy frugality is sacrificing your time and your cognitive space for the sake of pinching a few pennies here and there. And that is a really terrible way to live a life.
So Paula, if the listeners are looking to get a hold of you or reach out to you or go listen to your podcast, where can they do that? Where can they go watch the movie? Give us a handoff.
Sure. So on YouTube, I'm youtube.com/afford anything. So please go there to check out. We put all of our podcast episodes there, and then we also create YouTube exclusive content. So I would check that out. Or if you want to go to Spotify, Pandora, any podcast playing app on your phone, you can subscribe to the Afford Anything podcast there. And then the movie is on Netflix. It's called Get Smart with Money.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. I think the listener can get some value out of this. And once again, I really enjoyed the movie and I like your podcast. So
Thank you.